You have 10 minutes to leave this restaurant and never come back." Carlos Eduardo's voice sliced through the air like a razor, making every customer at the Golden Maison stop eating. Ana Clara's knees trembled, but she kept the tray steady in her hands. 23 years carrying plates without dropping a single one, and today wouldn't be the first. What nobody in that marble hall knew was that in less than an hour, the man who had just shouted would be the one begging to stay. The clock read 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday, when Ana Clara's life collapsed. But by 3:30 that same day, she would be sitting in the leather chair that belonged to the man humiliating her now. And all because of a $3,000 glass of wine she hadn't even touched. The Golden Maison wasn't just a restaurant. It was a temple of the American elite, where executives closed multi-million-dollar deals between sips of Chateau Petrus and bites of dishes that cost more than Ana Clara's monthly paycheck. Baccarat crystal chandeliers hung from the 16-foot-high ceiling, casting golden light over Belgian linen tablecloths that covered no more than 40 tables for the privileged few each night. Ana Clara knew every inch of that place. 3 years serving the rich and powerful had taught her more about human nature than any university could. She knew the businessman at table 5 always ordered the same 160 Chateaubriand. She knew the socialite at table 12 had a ritual: photograph every dish before taking exactly 3 bites. She had memorized the preferences of every regular, their quirks, their whispered secrets between glasses of Dom Perignon champagne at $2,500 a bottle. That afternoon, the restaurant buzzed with its usual clientele. A senator sat in the far corner, 2 bankers discussed a merger at the center table, and a famous actress celebrated a new TV contract with her friends. All of them witnesses to what was about to unfold. Carlos Eduardo strutted between the tables like a peacock, his Armani suit flawless, his smile carefully tailored to each important guest. At 38, he had landed the manager position not through merit, but because he was the nephew of one of the investors. A detail he preferred to hide, cultivating instead the image of a self-made man who had built the restaurant's success on his own. Ana Clara adjusted her simple black uniform, the only piece of clothing she owned without stains, and kept working. The white apron tied around her waist hid the phone where messages from her kid's school piled up. "Mrs. Ana, just a reminder that tuition is due tomorrow." She took a deep breath. She still had 3 days before the payment was due, and with her $2,500 salary plus tips, she'd manage. Little did she know that in 15 minutes, Carlos Eduardo would try to take even that away from her. It all began with an involuntary gesture. Ana Clara was serving table 8, where a couple was celebrating their anniversary with a $15,000 Romanée Conti, when her hand brushed lightly against the lady's glass. The Riedel crystal, as thin as paper, wobbled for half a second before settling back in place. Not a single drop spilled, no damage was done. But Carlos Eduardo saw an opportunity he had been waiting for ever since Ana Clara politely turned down his advances in the stockroom. The manager cut across the dining room like a shark sensing blood, his Italian shoes echoing against the Carrara marble. "Ana Clara," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "what just happened here is unacceptable." The waitress felt her blood run cold, but she maintained the professional composure forged by years of service. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carlos. The glass is intact and—" But he interrupted with a theatrical gesture, turning toward the embarrassed couple who clearly hadn't cared about the incident. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Golden Maison, I sincerely apologize for our employees' careless behavior. As compensation, the bottle will be on the house." The husband tried to protest, saying it wasn't necessary, that nothing had happened. But Carlos Eduardo had already turned back to Ana Clara with a smile that never reached his eyes. "My office, now." The walk to the manager's office felt endless. Ana Clara could feel the other employees' eyes on her, some filled with pity, others with relief it wasn't them. Julio, the sommelier, looked away as she passed. Marina, the hostess, bit her lip nervously. Everyone knew what was coming. Carlos Eduardo had a habit of making public executions to keep the staff in line. But instead of closing the office door, Carlos Eduardo left it wide open, making sure everyone in the main hall could hear. "Do you know how much that bottle you almost knocked over costs?" he asked, though both knew nothing had been knocked over. $15,000, more than you earn in 6 months. And do you know what's worse? That couple are the Yamamotos, Japanese investors considering an $8 million partnership with our group, a partnership you almost destroyed with your incompetence. Ana Clara knew it was a lie. The Yamamotos had been regulars for 2 years, always requesting the same table, the same wine, always leaving generous tips. Mrs. Yamamoto had even learned a few English words from her during their visits. But contradicting Carlos Eduardo now would mean signing her own professional death sentence, so she stayed silent, hands clasped in front of her, waiting for the storm to pass. But the storm didn't pass. Carlos Eduardo walked to the office door and, with a dramatic gesture, drew the attention of the entire dining room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I believe in transparency with our esteemed clients. Unfortunately, we've just identified an employee who does not meet the Golden Maison's standards of excellence." The silence that followed was so deep it was possible to hear the faint clinking of cutlery in the kitchen. Ana Clara felt her face burn as dozens of eyes turned toward her, some curious, others embarrassed, most indifferent to the drama of a simple waitress. "Ana Clara Silva," Carlos Eduardo continued, savoring every word as if it were a rare wine. "After 3 years of mediocre service and today's incident that nearly cost the restaurant $1 million partnership, you are officially dismissed. You have 10 minutes to collect your belongings and leave the premises. Security will ensure the deadline is met." The wall clock read 2:23 p.m. when Ana Clara felt her world collapse. It wasn't just her $2,500 monthly salary she was losing. It was the tips that paid for her mother Maria's blood pressure medication, her twins Julia and Peter's $100 and $200 school tuition, and the $1,800 rent for their 2-bedroom apartment in Queens where the 4 of them lived. "Mr. Carlos," she tried one last time, her voice trembling but resolute, "please, you know I need this job. My mother is sick. I have 2 young children. I'll make up for the mistake. Work extra hours without pay. Anything." But Carlos Eduardo had already turned away, adjusting his cufflinks as if the conversation had contaminated him somehow. 9 minutes and 30 seconds, he said, without looking back. "And if you try to take anything that isn't personal, I'll call the police for theft." That's when Ana Clara noticed a detail she had overlooked in the heat of the moment. At table 3, partially hidden behind a menu, sat a man she had never seen before. Impeccably cut gray hair, a suit that even from a distance revealed itself as custom-tailored, and eyes that observed the entire scene with unsettling intensity. Roberto Mendez, though she didn't yet know his name, had arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes earlier, ordered only sparkling water, and seemed more interested in the staff's behavior than in the $500 menu in front of him. Ana Clara walked toward the staff locker room with the dignity she could still muster, but something inside her refused to accept the injustice quietly. She stopped in the middle of the dining room, right on the Persian rug worth more than she would earn in a decade, and turned to face Carlos Eduardo. "You know what's ironic, Mr. Carlos?" she said, her voice trembling yet carrying a clarity that silenced several conversations. "You accuse me of incompetence, but you seem to have forgotten that I was the one who saved this restaurant from disaster exactly 3 months ago." Carlos Eduardo turned as red as the Cabernet Sauvignon the guests were drinking. But before he could respond, Ana Clara continued, each word gaining strength. "Or do you not remember that Thursday in November when a group of Chinese investors arrived without a reservation and none of our servers spoke Mandarin? Or when the Russian ambassador's son had an allergic reaction, and I was the one who noticed the dish contained peanuts hidden in the sauce, even though it wasn't on the menu?" The restaurant was now utterly silent, as if everyone present were witnessing an unexpected play at the city's most exclusive theater. Roberto Mendez, still at his table, leaned slightly forward. There was something familiar about this waitress, something beyond her momentary courage. He had built a $200 million empire by spotting talent where others saw only employees, and his instincts, sharpened by 40 years in business, screamed that there was far more to this woman than her plain uniform suggested. Carlos Eduardo took 3 steps toward Ana Clara, his face contorted in barely contained fury. "You have 5 minutes now," he hissed through clenched teeth, but Ana Clara didn't move. Years of silent submission had built a dam inside her, and now that the first crack had appeared, there was no holding back the flood. "Funny how you're in such a hurry now," she said, pulling a small black notebook from her apron pocket, the one she always carried. "But you weren't in any hurry to deposit the $15,000 you skimmed from the register last month, claiming an inventory discrepancy." Carlos Eduardo's face turned from crimson to corpse white in seconds. Murmurs rippled through the tables like waves across a lake. "You're delusional," he managed to say, but his voice had lost its former authority. "Am I?" Ana Clara opened the notebook, flipping through pages filled with her meticulous handwriting. January 12th, $3,200 missing. January 26th, $4,800. February 3rd, $7,000. Curiously, always on days when Patricia, the accountant, wasn't around. And even more curious, on February 4th, you showed up with that brand new $20,000 Rolex. Roberto Mendez discreetly picked up his phone and sent a quick message. Something was about to happen in that restaurant, and he wanted to make sure the right people were paying attention. Meanwhile, Carlos Eduardo tried to regain control. "Security!" he shouted, and 2 uniformed men approached. "Remove this woman immediately. She is disturbing our customers and making slanderous accusations." But Ana Clara wasn't done. As the guards advanced, she raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Do you know why he wants me out of here so fast? Because I know he takes kickbacks from suppliers, 10% commission to approve contracts. Jose from the wine distributor can confirm it. Maria from the organic produce supplier too. They all pay, or they lose their contract with the Golden Maison." The guard stopped halfway, unsure how to proceed in the face of these revelations. Then, Ana Clara played her most devastating card. "And that $8 million partnership with the Yamamotos he mentioned, a lie. The Yamamotos are tourists who stumbled upon this restaurant 2 years ago. Mrs. Kimiko Yamamoto is a retired teacher, and Mr. Yamamoto owns a small electronics shop in Tokyo. I know this because I speak with them in Japanese every time they come here. Oh yes, I speak Japanese, and Mandarin, and English, and Spanish. Things I learned while Mr. Carlos Eduardo was too busy counting stolen money to notice who really keeps this restaurant running. The silence that followed was so dense it seemed to have physical weight. Carlos Eduardo opened and closed his mouth several times like a fish out of water, processing the fact that his most insignificant employee had just exposed years of corruption in front of 40 witnesses. Ana Clara seized the moment of shock to continue, and now her voice had lost any trace of nervousness. Do you want to know how a simple waitress knows all this? Because while you see me as nothing more than furniture carrying plates, I have eyes, ears, and believe it or not, a brain that works perfectly well. She took a few steps toward the center of the dining room, and the security guards, still frozen by the situation, made no move to stop her. 3 years ago, when I started here, I had just put my MBA in business management on hold at a top university. Yes, gentlemen, the waitress you barely notice has a postgraduate degree. I had to abandon my studies when my mother was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and kidney failure. The treatment cost $4,000 a month, and insurance didn't cover it. So I came to work here because I needed money right away. Roberto Mendez had risen discreetly and stepped a little closer, still in the shadows but near enough not to miss a detail. Something about this woman's story was connecting pieces in his memory, a puzzle he hadn't even known he was assembling. Ana Clara continued, tears now in her eyes, though her voice remained steady. Do you know what it's like to serve people who spend in one meal what you don't make in 2 months, to hear conversations about million-dollar investments while you count coins for the bus ride home? But the worst part isn't that. The worst part is having the skills, the knowledge, the competence, and still being treated as if you're invisible. She turned again to face Carlos Eduardo, who had taken a few steps back as if her words were physical blows. Remember the Steinberg deal 3 months ago? The $20 million exclusive supply contract the Golden Maison almost lost? Murmurs rippled through the dining room. Everyone knew the story. It had been one of the restaurant's biggest deals of the year. What you don't know is that the deal was about to fall apart because no one here spoke German, and Mr. Heinrich Steinberg refused to negotiate in any other language. It was a matter of principle for him. Ana Clara paused dramatically, savoring for the first time in 3 years the sensation of having a voice. I was the one who saved that contract, me, the invisible waitress who just happens to speak fluent German because my grandfather was an immigrant and taught me from childhood. I spent 3 hours translating documents in the conference room while Mr. Carlos Eduardo took all the credit. And do you know what my reward was? Nothing. Not even a thank you. Not a single extra cent. Just the order to get back to work and never mention it to anyone. Carlos Eduardo's face had turned a sickly green that clashed horribly with his expensive suit. Some customers had pulled out their phones and were discreetly recording, sensing they were witnessing something that would go viral within hours. And it wasn't just that time, Ana Clara continued, carried by 3 years of pent-up frustration. How many times have I saved critical situations in this restaurant? When the Michelin Guide critic came in disguise and I was the only one who noticed? When I stopped spoiled seafood from being served that could have caused mass food poisoning? When I caught one of the new waiters stealing customers' credit cards? That was the moment Roberto Mendez decided he had heard enough. He rose from table 3 with the calm of someone used to commanding boardrooms, and his presence immediately changed the atmosphere of the restaurant. There was something about him. Perhaps the way he moved, perhaps the cut of his $20,000 suit, or simply the aura of power that decades of business success bestow, that made everyone turn toward him. "Pardon the interruption," he said, his deep voice filling the room as effortlessly as a cello filling a concert hall. "But I believe this conversation concerns me directly." Carlos Eduardo, already pale, turned even whiter as he recognized the man approaching. His lips silently formed the words Roberto Mendez, as if he had seen a ghost. Ana Clara, on the other hand, frowned, trying to place the vaguely familiar face. Roberto stopped a few feet from the group, hands casually in his pockets, as though about to comment on the weather. "Mr. Carlos Eduardo," he said with a smile that never reached his eyes, "you know who I am, don't you?" The manager swallowed hard and tried to recover some composure. "Mr. Mendez, what an honor to have you in our establishment. I apologize for this unfortunate scene. This employee is clearly disturbed and—" But Roberto interrupted with a gentle wave of his hand. "Please go on, Ms. Silva," he said, turning to Ana Clara. "Yes, I know your full name." Ana Clara Silva, 32 years old, mother of twins, studied business administration on a full scholarship, had to pause your MBA in the 3rd semester. Am I correct? Ana Clara felt a chill run down her spine. How did this man know so much about her? Roberto seemed to read her confusion and smiled, this time genuinely. 3 months ago, when you saved the Steinberg deal, I was on the other end of the phone. You see, Heinrich Steinberg has been my partner for 20 years. He called me absolutely amazed by the Brazilian waitress who spoke perfect German and had saved a $20 million contract. I was intrigued and did some research. The silence in the restaurant was so absolute that the faint hum of the air conditioner could be heard. Roberto continued, now walking slowly around Carlos Eduardo like a predator circling its prey. "Do you know what I found? I found that Ana Clara Silva is not just multilingual. She speaks 5 languages fluently: Portuguese, English, Spanish, German, and Japanese. I found that she graduated top of her class. I found that her thesis on human resource management in family-owned businesses was published in an international academic journal. And I found something even more interesting." He stopped and stared directly at Carlos Eduardo. "I found that over the last 3 years, every major success attributed to this restaurant's management was, in fact, the direct result of this woman you were trying to humiliate 5 minutes ago." Roberto pulled his phone from his pocket and held the screen up for Carlos Eduardo to see. "This is an email from my lawyer with ownership documents. I own 60% of the Golden Maison. I bought the majority stake 6 months ago but chose to remain anonymous to observe how the business was really being run, and what I saw today gave me all the answers I needed." Carlos Eduardo tried to speak, but his voice came out as a pathetic croak. "Mr. Mendez, I can explain. This woman's accusations are baseless," and Roberto raised his hand again, and silence fell instantly. "Mr. Carlos Eduardo, do you really think I would buy a majority stake in a $50 million business without a full audit? I know about every dollar embezzled, every bribe taken, every tax irregularity in the past 2 years. I was merely waiting for the right moment to act, and you just handed me the perfect opportunity." Roberto turned to the customers, many of whom he knew personally from the business world. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. What you've witnessed today is exactly the kind of management that has been rotting this establishment from within. A corrupt, incompetent, and abusive manager who had the audacity to publicly humiliate the one person who has been keeping this restaurant running with excellence. He paused deliberately, letting his words sink in. And now, I will correct this injustice. Carlos Eduardo stepped back as if the words were physical blows. You can't do this. I have a contract. I have labor rights. My uncle is an investor. Roberto laughed, a humorless sound that echoed through the hall. Your uncle sold me his stake 3 months ago. He was tired of covering your thefts. And as for your contract, I suggest you review Clause 17, Paragraph 3, on termination for cause in cases of embezzlement. You're fired, Mr. Carlos Eduardo. And not just fired. My lawyers will contact you about restitution of stolen funds and possible criminal charges. The former manager staggered as if struck by lightning. Some customers broke into spontaneous applause, others filmed the scene on their phones, already imagining the millions of views the video would rack up. Carlos Eduardo looked around desperately for support but found only eyes filled with contempt and satisfaction. The same employees he had terrorized for years now watched his downfall with barely disguised delight. Roberto then turned to Ana Clara, who was still processing how her life had changed in the past 10 minutes. Ms. Silva, he said with genuine respect in his voice, something she had never heard from a superior before. I have a proposal for you. But first, I need everyone here to understand exactly who Ana Clara Silva is. He walked to the center of the dining room, making sure he had everyone's attention. This woman has saved this restaurant more times than I can count. The Steinberg contract, that was her. The surprise visit from the Michelin critic that earned us our 2nd star, she spotted the critic and made sure everything was flawless. The deal with organic suppliers that cut our costs by 30%? Her idea, implemented without any recognition. Ana Clara felt tears streaming down her face, but they were no longer of sadness or anger. This was the validation she had waited for over 3 years, arriving so spectacularly it felt like a dream. Roberto continued, now looking directly at her. For 3 years, you worked in a position far beneath your abilities, humiliated, exploited, and ignored. That ends today. Ana Clara Silva, I want you to be the new general manager of the Golden Maison. The silence that followed was broken by a collective gasp of surprise. Ana Clara's knees buckled, and she had to lean on a nearby chair for support. Mr. Mendez, I don't know what to say, she managed between tears. Roberto smiled warmly. Say yes. The starting salary will be $25,000 a month with profit sharing, full health coverage for you and your family, and a $50,000 signing bonus to make up for the years of injustice. Oh, and I want you to resume your MBA. The company will cover all expenses. Ana Clara looked at Roberto Mendez as if he had just spoken Mandarin, though she understood the language perfectly. $25,000 a month was more than she had ever dreamed of earning before her life had fallen apart 3 years earlier. Her hands trembled as she tried to form coherent words, but before she could respond, Carlos Eduardo exploded in a last desperate attempt to salvage what little remained of his shattered dignity. This is insane. She has no management experience. She doesn't know the suppliers. She knows nothing about high-level administration. You'll destroy this restaurant. Roberto slowly turned to face the former manager, and there was something dangerous in his calmness. Mr. Carlos Eduardo, Ms. Silva just demonstrated that she knows this restaurant better than anyone. As for management experience, let me refresh your memory of your own qualifications when you took this position. Oh yes, you were the nephew of an investor and had just been fired from a car dealership for incompetence. At least she has relevant academic training. The final blow was precise and devastating. Carlos Eduardo recoiled as if slapped, his face a mask of humiliation and impotent rage. Ana Clara finally found her voice, and when she spoke, there was a clarity that surprised even herself. "Mr. Mendez, I accept your offer, but with one condition." Roberto raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Not many people negotiated with him, especially after receiving such a generous proposal. "And what condition would that be, Ms. Silva?" She took a deep breath, knowing she was risking everything. But 3 years of humiliation had taught her the value of defending her principles. "I want to implement a development program for all employees, waiters, cooks, assistants. Everyone deserves the chance to grow. Many of them have untapped potential, just like I did." The smile that spread across Roberto Mendez's face was genuine and warm. "And that's exactly why I want you as manager. Consider it approved. You'll have a $100,000 annual budget for staff training and development." The restaurant employees, who had watched everything in stunned silence, began to applaud. First timidly, then with growing enthusiasm. Marina, the hostess, was openly crying. Julio, the sommelier, let out a loud whistle. Even the cooks had come out of the kitchen to witness the historic moment. Realizing his defeat was total and irrevocable, Carlos Eduardo tried to leave with the little dignity he had left, but Roberto stopped him with one last remark. "Oh, Mr. Carlos Eduardo, before you go, there's the small matter of the $15,000 Miss Silva mentioned. My attorneys will be in touch. And I suggest you find a good criminal lawyer, because fraud and embezzlement are serious crimes." The former manager stormed out, slamming the door so hard the crystal chandeliers tinkled. But no one paid attention. Every eye was on Ana Clara, who was still processing the radical change in her life. In 15 minutes, she had gone from a waitress about to be unjustly fired to the general manager of one of the most prestigious restaurants in New York. Roberto Mendez looked around the dining room where customers and staff were still processing the extraordinary scene they had just witnessed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced clearly, "please give us a few minutes. The restaurant will continue operating as normal, and as an apology for the disturbance, dessert will be on the house for everyone here." A murmur of approval rippled through the tables, and gradually normal conversation resumed, though curious glances kept darting toward Ana Clara every few seconds. Roberto led Ana Clara to the office that, minutes earlier, had belonged to Carlos Eduardo. It was a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city, dark mahogany furniture, and a bookcase full of gastronomy titles that had likely never been opened. Ana Clara hesitated at the door, as if crossing that threshold meant stepping between two completely different lives. "Come in," Roberto said gently. "This is your office now. I know it feels surreal, but I promise that in a few weeks it will feel like the most natural thing in the world." She stepped in slowly, her fingers brushing the polished surface of the desk where she had so often been humiliated. "Mr. Mendez," she began, but he stopped her with a gesture. "Roberto, please. We're colleagues now, not boss and subordinate." Ana Clara drew a deep breath, trying to organize the whirlwind in her mind. "Roberto, I need to call my mother. She's waiting to hear whether I still have a job. and I need to pick up my kids from school in 3 hours. I have no idea how I'm going to explain all this to them." Roberto smiled with understanding. "Make your calls. And as for picking up your children, I suggest you use the company car. Marcos, our driver, is at your disposal. In fact, given your new position, we'll arrange a car for your personal use. It's part of the benefits package." Ana Clara sank into the leather chair, the same one where Carlos Eduardo had once plotted his petty schemes. "This is all happening so fast," she murmured, more to herself than to Roberto. "I know," he replied, taking the chair across from the desk. "But sometimes life surprises us this way. I've spent 6 months watching this place, seeing wasted potential, poor management, ignored talent. When I walked in today, I intended to make drastic changes, but I didn't expect to find the solution carrying a tray. Ana Clara, you have something rare. Technical competence combined with practical knowledge and, most importantly, genuine empathy for the staff. It's exactly the kind of leadership this place needs." 3 months had passed since that dramatic afternoon in February, and the Golden Maison was unrecognizable, not in its physical appearance, which kept the same refined elegance, but in its soul. Ana Clara arrived at 6 a.m., as she did every day, but now she entered through the front door, not the service entrance. The rising sun streamed through the imported stained glass, casting golden patterns over the marble, and she paused a moment to appreciate the beauty she had barely noticed before, back when she was sprinting between tables. "Good morning, Anna." Marina's cheerful voice, still the hostess, but now enrolled in business classes through the development program Ana Clara had implemented, echoed through the room. "Yesterday's report is on your desk, and we have 3 interviews today, candidates for the new guest services supervisor role." Ana Clara smiled, remembering how Marina had cried with joy when she learned she'd have a chance to study without leaving her job. The program had already benefited 15 employees, from kitchen assistants to servers, all discovering potential that had gone unnoticed for years. The numbers spoke for themselves. Revenue had risen 42% in just 3 months. Not through price hikes or cost cutting, but through a quiet revolution in how the restaurant operated. Ana Clara instituted weekly meetings where every employee could offer suggestions, and some of the best ideas came from unexpected places. It was Pedro, the cleaning assistant, who suggested reorganizing the reservation system to cut wait times. It was Marcia from the kitchen who proposed a special menu for guests with dietary restrictions that became an instant hit. Roberto Mendez stopped by once a week to track progress, and that May morning he arrived earlier than usual. "Ana Clara," he said, stepping into the office that now bore her personal touches. Photos of Julia and Peter in their new school uniforms, the framed MBA diploma she was completing, a small plant that Donna Maria had given her. "I have extraordinary news. The Michelin Guide just awarded us a 3rd star. We are now one of the few restaurants in the United States with that rating." Ana Clara had to sit down. A 3rd Michelin star is any restaurant's dream, something Carlos Eduardo had chased for years through flattery and attempted bribery without ever getting close. How did this happen?" she managed. Roberto beamed. "The anonymous inspector came 3 weeks ago. You served him personally, remember? An older Japanese gentleman who requested several menu modifications." Ana Clara remembered perfectly. She'd spoken with him in Japanese, helped choose dishes that respected his dietary restrictions, and ensured every detail was perfect, not because she suspected he was a critic, but because that's how she believed every guest should be treated. The celebration over the third star was still reverberating through the restaurant when the front door opened and a familiar yet deeply changed figure stepped in hesitantly. Carlos Eduardo was unrecognizable. The Armani suit replaced by simple clothes. The once arrogant face now lined with worry and a humility in his posture Ana Clara had never seen before. The staff on the floor tensed immediately, some positioning themselves protectively near Ana Clara, but she raised a gentle hand to signal it was all right. "Carlos," she said, not using the formal last name she had once been forced to use. "What brings you here?" He swallowed, clearly struggling with the pride that had once defined him. "Ana Clara, I came to apologize. And maybe, if there's any possibility, to ask for a chance." The silence that followed was heavy, packed with the 3 years of humiliations everyone there had witnessed or suffered. Marina took a step forward, ready to throw him out, but Ana Clara gestured for her to wait. "A chance for what exactly?" Ana Clara asked, her voice neutral but not hostile. Carlos Eduardo lowered his eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse with contained emotion. "I lost everything. The lawsuits drained my savings. No one will hire me. My reputation is ruined. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing you were right about everything. I was a terrible manager and an even worse human being. I've spent these 3 months thinking about every humiliation I inflicted, every talent I wasted, every opportunity I missed out of pure arrogance." Ana Clara studied the man before her, searching for signs of manipulation, but found only genuine defeat and perhaps the beginnings of real change. "What exactly are you asking for?" she said. "Anything," he replied. "I can start as an assistant. Wash dishes, bus tables, any honest work. I need to rebuild my life, but more than that, I need to prove to myself that I can be different." Roberto Mendez, who had watched the exchange in silence, stepped closer. "Ana Clara, the decision is yours. This is your restaurant now." Ana Clara was quiet for a long moment, and everyone on the floor held their breath. Finally, she spoke. "Carlos, I'll give you a chance, but under strict conditions. You'll start as a busser, minimum wage plus pooled tips. You'll be required to participate in our personal development program. Any sign of abusive behavior, any attempt to humiliate another employee, and you're out. No second chances. Do you accept?" Carlos Eduardo lifted his head, tears in his eyes. "I accept. And Ana Clara, thank you. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you." 1 year later, on a sunny February afternoon, Ana Clara stood on the Golden Maison's terrace, now expanded to include a vertical garden she had designed herself. The restaurant had become a business school case study, not just for its financial success. Revenue had doubled to $100 million annually, but for the human transformation it embodied. Julia and Peter played at a nearby table, doing homework while they waited for their mother to finish her shift. Donna Maria, fully recovered thanks to treatment Ana Clara could now afford, volunteered in the new training wing where young people from underserved communities learned culinary and hospitality skills. Most surprising of all was seeing Carlos Eduardo crossing the dining room with a tray, serving a table of executives with genuine courtesy. In 12 months, he had gone from assistant to full waiter. And though he would never return to management, he had found a dignity in honest work he had never known when he was at the top. Roberto Mendez visited monthly, not to supervise anymore, but to learn. "Ana Clara," he had said on his last visit, "you've turned this place into something I didn't know was possible. A highly profitable business that is also profoundly humane. As the sun set over New York City, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ana Clara reflected on the improbable journey that had brought her there. From humiliated waitress to CEO of one of the country's most respected restaurants, her story had become legend in the corporate world. But for her, the real triumph wasn't in the numbers or the prestige. It was in the 15 employees attending college, the 30 jobs created, the hundreds of lives transformed by the simple decision to treat people with dignity. Sometimes, she thought, the greatest revolutions begin when someone has the courage to tell the truth at the right moment. And the truth, as she had learned on that fateful afternoon, always finds a way to prevail.